The morning sun cast long shadows across Fort Bragg's training ground as Staff Sergeant Maria Santos adjusted her shooting mat for the 100th time. At 5 feet 2 inches tall and weighing barely 110 pounds, she looked like a child next to the massive Barrett M82A1 .50 caliber rifle lying before her. The weapon was nearly as long as she was tall, weighing 30 pounds when fully loaded. "You sure about this, Santos?" Master Sergeant Jake Morrison called out from behind the firing line. His voice carried that familiar tone of doubt she'd heard countless times throughout her military career. "That rifle's got more kick than a mule, and you're about half the size of most people who can handle it." Maria didn't turn around. She'd learned long ago that responding to such comments only made things worse. Instead, she focused on her breathing, watching the distant targets through her scope. The Barrett 50 cal wasn't just any rifle. It was a legend among snipers, capable of taking out vehicles, equipment, and targets at distances exceeding a mile. The recoil could knock an unprepared shooter flat on their back, and the muzzle blast was loud enough to cause permanent hearing damage without proper protection. Around her, the other candidates for the advanced sniper course watched with varying degrees of skepticism and amusement. There were 12 of them total, all competing for 8 spots in the elite program. Most were large, imposing men who looked like they'd stepped out of an action movie. Then there was Maria, who people often mistook for someone's younger sister visiting the base. "I've got $50 that says she can't even properly shoulder that thing," whispered Sergeant First Class Tommy Chen to the man beside him. The comment wasn't meant to be cruel, but it stung nonetheless. Maria had heard variations of it throughout her 6 years in the Army. She'd joined the military straight out of high school in El Paso, Texas, driven by a desire to serve her country and prove that size didn't determine capability. Her father had been a mechanic, her mother a teacher, and neither had understood her decision to enlist. They'd worried about their pequeña princesa, their little princess, heading off to a world dominated by men twice her size. Basic training had been brutal. Drill sergeants had questioned whether she could handle the physical demands. Fellow recruits had initially treated her like a mascot rather than a soldier. But Maria had something that size couldn't measure, an absolutely unwavering determination to succeed, combined with natural shooting ability that bordered on supernatural. During her initial marksmanship training, something magical happened when Maria picked up a rifle. Her breathing steadied, her heartbeat slowed, and the world around her seemed to fade away until only she and the target existed. While other recruits struggled to hit targets at 300 yards, Maria was consistently placing shots in the bullseye at 600 yards with iron sights. Her abilities hadn't gone unnoticed. Captain Sarah Williams, one of the few female officers in her unit, had pulled her aside after a particularly impressive shooting demonstration. "Santos, have you ever considered sniper school?" Captain Williams had asked. "Because what I just witnessed isn't normal. That's a gift." The suggestion had seemed impossible at first. Snipers were typically chosen from the ranks of infantry soldiers, and Maria was in a support unit. They were usually large, strong men who could carry heavy equipment for miles without complaint. Most importantly, they needed to be able to handle the massive rifles that defined modern military sniping. But Captain Williams had connections and believed in pushing boundaries. She'd arranged for Maria to attend a pre-selection course, where candidates were evaluated for potential sniper training. The course was designed to weed out unsuitable candidates before the expensive and time-consuming formal training began. That pre-selection course had been where Maria first encountered the Barrett 50 caliber rifle, and where the whispers about her size had begun in earnest. The other candidates had watched in amazement as she'd not only handled the massive weapon, but had achieved groupings that impressed even the instructors. Now, 6 months later, she was here at the advanced sniper course, trying to prove that her success in pre-selection hadn't been a fluke. "All right, everyone listen up," called out Master Sergeant Morrison, the chief instructor for the course. At 6 feet 4 inches and built like a linebacker, he commanded immediate attention. Today, we're starting with the Barrett M82A1. This isn't your standard infantry rifle, people. This is a 50 caliber anti-material rifle designed to destroy equipment and engage targets at extreme ranges. He gestured toward the line of massive rifles laid out on the shooting benches. The cartridge weighs over 2 ounces and travels at nearly 3,000 feet per second. The recoil generates approximately 85 foot-pounds of energy. For comparison, a typical hunting rifle generates about 20 foot-pounds of recoil. Several of the candidates exchanged nervous glances. Maria remained focused on her weapon, running through the mental checklist she'd developed during pre-selection. The effective range of this system is approximately 1,800 meters, though confirmed kills have been made at distances exceeding 2,000 meters, Morrison continued. But range means nothing if you can't handle the recoil and maintain proper form. He paused dramatically, his eyes scanning the line of candidates. When his gaze fell on Maria, she saw a flicker of uncertainty. Each of you will fire 5 rounds at targets placed at 800 meters. Your groupings will be measured and recorded. Anyone who cannot maintain proper form or achieve acceptable accuracy will be dropped from the program immediately. The announcement sent a ripple of tension through the group. 800 meters was a significant distance, and the Barrett's reputation for punishing recoil was well known throughout the military. The first candidate, a massive sergeant from the 82nd Airborne, approached his rifle with confidence. Maria watched as he settled into position, adjusted his scope, and prepared to fire. Even from her position down the line, she could see his proper form and steady breathing. The Barrett's report was thunderous, echoing across the range like a cannon shot. The sergeant absorbed the recoil well, quickly chambering another round and firing again. His 5 shots resulted in a respectable grouping that earned him a nod of approval from the instructors. One by one, the candidates took their turns. Some handled the rifle well, others struggled with the massive recoil and loud report. 2 candidates were eliminated immediately when they failed to maintain proper shooting position after their first shots. As Maria's turn approached, the whispered conversations around her became more obvious. She could hear fragments. Can't weigh more than 100 pounds. Rifle weighs 30% of her body weight. Going to knock her flat on her ass. Finally, it was her turn. She approached the Barrett methodically, running through her pre-shooting routine. First, she adjusted the bipod legs to accommodate her height. Then she positioned her shooting mat and settled into a prone position behind the massive rifle. The Barrett M82A1 was an impressive piece of engineering. Its semi-automatic action could fire 10 rounds as fast as she could pull the trigger, though accuracy demanded careful, deliberate shots. The muzzle brake was designed to redirect gases and reduce recoil, but it also created a distinctive blast signature that could reveal a sniper's position. Maria pressed her cheek against the stock and aligned her eye with the scope. The target, 800 meters away, appeared clearly in her optics. She could feel every pair of eyes on the range watching her, waiting to see if the small woman could handle the massive rifle. Her breathing slowed to the rhythm she'd practiced thousands of times. In through the nose, hold, out through the mouth. Her heartbeat became steady and predictable. Between heartbeats, in that moment of perfect stillness, she squeezed the trigger. The explosion of sound and fury from the Barrett was overwhelming, but Maria had prepared for it. She rode the recoil, allowing the rifle to push back against her shoulder while maintaining her sight picture. The muzzle brake directed gases sideways with such force that dust and debris flew in all directions. But she stayed in position, quickly worked the bolt, and prepared for her second shot. The whispers had stopped. Even Master Sergeant Morrison was watching intently. 4 more shots followed in steady succession. Each time, Maria demonstrated perfect form and complete control of the massive weapon. The Barrett might have been designed for larger operators, but she had adapted her technique to work with the rifle rather than against it. When she finished her 5-round string, Silence filled the range. Everyone waited for the target results to be called back over the radio. "Target 7, Santos," the radio crackled to life. "5 rounds, 6-inch grouping. Nice shooting, Sergeant." The silence continued for another moment before Master Sergeant Morrison spoke up. "Outstanding, Santos. That's the tightest grouping we've seen today." The other candidates looked at each other with new respect. A 6-inch grouping at 800 meters with a Barrett 50 cal was professional-level shooting. Maria had not only handled the massive rifle, she'd outshot most of the men on the line, but she knew this was just the beginning. The advanced sniper course was 8 weeks long, and today was only the first day. She would face challenges that would test not just her shooting ability, but her knowledge of ballistics, weather reading, camouflage, stalking, and a dozen other skills that separated snipers from regular riflemen. As she cleared her rifle and prepared to move to the next station, Sergeant First Class Chen approached her. The same man who'd bet against her ability to shoulder the Barrett properly now wore a sheepish expression. "Santos, I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "That was some serious shooting. I've been handling rifles for 15 years, and I've never seen groupings like that from a Barrett." Maria nodded politely but didn't smile. She'd learned that premature celebration often led to complacency. There would be time for satisfaction when she graduated from the course and earned her sniper qualification. That evening, as the candidates cleaned their weapons and prepared for the next day's training, Maria called her parents back in El Paso. Her mother answered on the second ring, her voice filled with the warmth and concern that had defined Maria's childhood. "Mija, how are you doing? Are they treating you well?" "I'm fine, Mama." Today went better than expected. She decided not to mention the Barrett or the doubts expressed by her fellow candidates. Her parents worried enough already. "Your father wants to know if you're eating enough. He says you were too skinny when you visited last month." Maria smiled despite herself. Her father's solution to every problem involved food. "Tell him the Army feeds me plenty." After hanging up, she sat on her bunk and cleaned her personal rifle, a process that had become meditative for her. Around her, the other candidates discussed the day's events, sharing stories and building the camaraderie that would be essential for their success. She noticed that the conversations had changed subtly. Earlier in the day, she'd been an outsider, someone the others weren't sure belonged in their elite group. Now, while still not fully accepted, she was at least being taken seriously as a competitor. The next morning brought new challenges. Instead of the precision shooting that had showcased her abilities, the training focused on physical fitness and equipment carrying. This was where her size disadvantage became most apparent. The candidates were required to carry full sniper equipment loads over varying distances and terrain. A complete sniper setup, including rifle, ammunition, observation equipment, and survival gear, could weigh 80 pounds or more. For Maria, that represented 75% of her body weight. She watched the larger candidates shoulder their packs with relative ease while she struggled to balance the load properly. The instructors watched carefully, evaluating not just her ability to carry the equipment, but her determination to overcome the physical challenges. The morning's march covered 6 miles through North Carolina's pine forests. The pace was brisk but manageable for most candidates. For Maria, it became a test of mental toughness as much as physical capability. By the 3rd mile, her shoulders ached from the pack's weight. By the 5th mile, she was fighting to keep up with the group's pace, but she refused to ask for help or show any sign of weakness. When Sergeant Chen quietly offered to share some of her load, she politely declined. "I need to prove I can do this myself," she explained. The march ended at an observation post where the candidates would spend the next several hours learning to identify and range targets using various optical devices. Maria's pack had left red marks on her shoulders, but she'd completed the march without falling behind or compromising her equipment. Master Sergeant Morrison pulled her aside as the group set up their observation equipment. "Santos, I'm impressed with your shooting, but I have to ask, are you sure you can handle the physical demands of this job? In the field, there won't be anyone to help you with your gear. You'll need to carry everything yourself, sometimes for days." It was a fair question, asked without malice or condescension. Maria appreciated his directness. "Sergeant, I understand your concern, but I've been compensating for my size my entire military career. I might not be as strong as the other candidates, but I'm willing to work harder than anyone else here to prove I belong." Morrison nodded slowly. "Fair enough. But remember, this course is designed to push everyone to their limits. For you, those limits might come sooner than for others." The afternoon's training focused on ballistics calculations and weather reading. This was where Maria's analytical mind gave her an advantage. While some of the other candidates struggled with the mathematical concepts involved in long-range shooting, she absorbed the information like a sponge. Wind reading was particularly crucial for sniper operations. A 10-mile-per-hour crosswind could push a 50-caliber bullet 18 inches off target at 1,000 yards. Temperature, humidity, and altitude all affected bullet trajectory in ways that required constant calculation and adjustment. Maria discovered that her smaller size actually provided some advantages in this area. She could more easily feel subtle changes in wind direction and velocity, and her lower profile made her less susceptible to detection while observing targets. As the days passed, the training became increasingly demanding. The candidates learned stalking techniques, spending hours crawling through underbrush while instructors with binoculars tried to spot them. They practiced camouflage construction, observation post building, and target identification under various conditions. Each phase of training eliminated more candidates. By the end of the second week, only 9 of the original 12 remained. Maria had not only survived, but had excelled in several areas, particularly in shooting accuracy and observation skills. Her reputation began to spread beyond the sniper course. Other soldiers on the base started talking about the tiny woman who could outshoot men twice her size with the Barrett 50 cal. The nickname Little Thunder began following her around, a reference to the massive rifle she handled with such precision. But with recognition came increased scrutiny. Some questioned whether standards were being lowered to accommodate her. Others suggested that her shooting ability was somehow artificial or unsustainable under real combat conditions. Maria ignored the gossip and focused on her training. She knew that ultimately, only performance mattered. Every morning, she was first to arrive at the training area. Every evening, she was last to leave. She studied ballistics tables while others watched television, practiced her stalking techniques during free time, and maintained her equipment to standards that impressed even the instructors. The third week brought the course's first major test, a comprehensive evaluation that would determine which candidates advanced to the final phase of training. The test combined all elements they'd learned so far, requiring them to successfully stalk to within 600 yards of an observation post, identify specific targets, and engage them accurately without being detected. Failure meant immediate elimination from the program. As Maria prepared her equipment the night before the test, she reflected on how far she'd come. 3 weeks ago, her fellow candidates had questioned whether she could even handle the Barrett rifle. Now, she was competing as an equal in one of the military's most demanding courses. But she also understood that the hardest challenges lay ahead. The final weeks of sniper training would test not just her technical skills, but her ability to perform under extreme stress and pressure. Tomorrow's evaluation would be her first real test of whether all her preparation would translate into success when it truly mattered. She cleaned her rifle one final time, checked her equipment, and tried to get some sleep. In the morning, she would either prove herself worthy of continuing in the program or join the ranks of those who'd tried and failed to become military snipers. The whispers about her size had grown quieter over the past weeks. replaced by a grudging respect for her abilities. But respect had to be earned again and again, one shot at a time. Tomorrow would be another opportunity to show that determination and skill mattered more than physical stature in the precision world of military sniping. The morning mist hung heavy over the North Carolina wilderness as Maria belly crawled through dense underbrush, her Barrett M82A1 secured across her back. Every movement had to be calculated and deliberate. The instructors watching from the observation post 600 yards away were equipped with high-powered optics and years of experience in detecting hidden snipers. She'd been moving for 3 hours, covering less than 400 yards. Her ghillie suit, painstakingly constructed from local vegetation, helped her blend with the forest floor. But camouflage was only as good as the discipline of the person wearing it. One careless movement, one piece of equipment catching the light wrong, and her test would be over. The evaluation scenario was designed to simulate real combat conditions. Hidden somewhere in the target area were 3 specific objectives she needed to identify and engage: a communications antenna, a fuel storage tank, and a high-value target represented by a mannequin in military uniform. She had 4 hours to locate all 3 targets and take successful shots without being detected by the instructors. Maria paused behind a fallen log, using her scope to scan the target area methodically. The communications antenna should be easiest to spot, but finding it without exposing herself to observation required patience and careful technique. Through her optics, she could see the observation post where Master Sergeant Morrison and 2 other instructors waited with powerful spotting scopes, trying to locate her position. 20 yards to her left, she could see Sergeant Chen working his way through a different approach route. His larger frame made concealment more challenging, but his experience showed in his smooth, deliberate movements. 2 other candidates were taking routes she couldn't see, but she knew they were out there, facing the same challenges. After 30 minutes of careful observation, she spotted her first target. The communications antenna was partially concealed behind a building, visible only from certain angles. She made note of its position and continued scanning for the other objectives. The fuel tank took another hour to locate. Positioned at the base of a hill and painted to blend with the surrounding vegetation, it would have been nearly impossible to spot without the high magnification optics on her Barrett. Finding the high-value target would be even more challenging, as it was designed to be mobile and would likely be moved periodically throughout the exercise. By noon, Maria had identified all 3 targets and planned her shooting positions. The real test would be engaging them accurately while maintaining her concealment. The Barrett's distinctive muzzle blast and report would immediately reveal her position to the instructors, so she would have only moments to take her shots before having to relocate. She selected a position behind a small ridge that offered clear lines of sight to all 3 targets while providing some protection from observation. The shooting sequence would be critical: antenna first, then the fuel tank, and finally the high-value target if she could relocate it in time. Maria settled into her shooting position and began her pre-engagement routine. Her breathing slowed, her heartbeat steadied, and the world contracted to the view through her scope. The communications antenna appeared clearly in her crosshairs at a measured distance of 730 yards. The Barrett's recoil system was designed to manage the massive forces generated by the .50 caliber cartridge, but proper body positioning was still crucial for accuracy and follow-up shots. Maria had developed a technique that used her entire body weight to absorb recoil, allowing her to maintain better control despite her smaller size. She squeezed the trigger, and the Barrett erupted with its characteristic thunder. The massive bullet covered the distance to the target in less than a second, striking the antenna dead center and sending it toppling to the ground. Without waiting to observe the impact, she immediately shifted her aim to the fuel tank. The second shot came 12 seconds after the first, another perfect hit that would have disabled the target in real combat conditions. Now came the challenging part, locating and engaging the mobile target while the instructors frantically searched for her position with their optics. Through her scope, she spotted movement near a cluster of buildings. The high-value target had been moved since her initial observation, but the mannequin's military uniform made it visible against the civilian backdrop. The range was 840 yards, requiring a slight adjustment for bullet drop and wind drift. Her third shot rang out just as she heard Master Sergeant Morrison's voice over the radio. "We've got muzzle flashes from Sector 7. She had perhaps 30 seconds before they pinpointed her location. The bullet struck the mannequin center mass, a shot that would have been fatal in real combat. Maria immediately began her withdrawal, low-crawling away from her firing position as quickly as stealth would allow. She could hear the instructors' voices growing more urgent as they tried to spot her new location. 20 minutes later, she emerged from the forest at the designated extraction point, her ghillie suit covered in dirt and vegetation, but her mission successfully completed. Sergeant Chen was already there, having finished his engagement sequence 10 minutes earlier. 2 other candidates arrived shortly after, but the 5th never appeared at the extraction point, having been spotted by the instructors during his approach. "Outstanding shooting, Santos," Master Sergeant Morrison announced when the scores were tallied. 3 for 3 at extended ranges, and you maintained concealment throughout your withdrawal. That's professional-level performance. The successful completion of the stalking evaluation marked a turning point in how the other candidates viewed Maria. The skepticism about her size had given way to respect for her abilities. Even the instructors seemed to regard her differently, treating her less like an experimental candidate and more like a future sniper. The remaining weeks of the course focused on advanced techniques and specialized scenarios. Maria learned urban sniping methods, including how to operate from buildings and use environmental factors to mask muzzle signatures. She practiced shooting at extreme ranges, pushing the Barrett's capabilities out to distances approaching 2,000 yards. Counter-sniper operations became particularly interesting for her. Her small size and ability to move quietly made her exceptionally difficult to detect and engage. During one exercise, she successfully stalked to within 300 yards of an opposing sniper team without being detected, a feat that impressed even the most experienced instructors. The course's final exercise was a comprehensive field problem that lasted 72 hours. Each remaining candidate was assigned a specific mission that required them to demonstrate all the skills they'd learned. Maria's assignment: infiltrate a defended area. Conduct surveillance for 24 hours, identify and eliminate 3 high-value targets, and extract without detection. The scenario was based on real-world operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, where snipers often worked alone or in small teams behind enemy lines. Success required not just shooting ability but also physical endurance, tactical planning, and psychological resilience. Maria's target area was a mock village constructed on the base, complete with buildings, vehicles, and role players acting as enemy forces. She would have to observe the area long enough to identify the target's patterns and routines, then plan and execute her engagements without alerting the defenders to her presence. The first challenge was infiltration. She chose to approach the village during a simulated sandstorm, using the reduced visibility to move closer than would normally be possible. Her small size allowed her to use concealment that wouldn't have hidden larger snipers, and she reached an observation post just 800 yards from the village center. For the next 24 hours, she maintained surveillance on the village, documenting the movements and routines of various role players while remaining completely hidden. The Barrett rifle, despite its size, proved surprisingly manageable during extended observations when properly supported. She identified all 3 targets during her surveillance period and planned her engagement sequence carefully. The first target, a supposed enemy commander, appeared at a specific location every morning at 0630 hours. The second target, a communications specialist, worked from a rooftop position that was visible only during certain times of day. The third target was mobile, requiring patience and timing to engage successfully. On the second morning of the exercise, Maria began her engagement sequence. The first shot, taken at 6:31 hours, struck the enemy commander at a range of 920 yards. The role player immediately signaled his death and withdrew from the exercise as required. The second target proved more challenging. The communications specialist's rooftop position was partially protected by sandbags, requiring a precise shot through a narrow opening. Maria waited nearly 3 hours for the perfect opportunity, finally taking the shot when the target moved into an exposed position. The range was over 1,100 yards, pushing the effective limits of her equipment and abilities. Her third target required the most patience. The mobile role player followed an irregular pattern that took Maria most of the day to figure out. When the opportunity finally came, she had to make a snapshot at a moving target at 870 yards. The bullet struck perfectly, completing her mission requirements. But the exercise wasn't over. She still needed to extract from the area without being detected by the now alerted defenders. The enemy forces knew a sniper was operating in their area and had begun systematic searches of likely positions. Maria chose to wait until nightfall before beginning her extraction. Using night vision equipment and her superior stealth skills, she successfully withdrew from the area and reached the extraction point without being detected. The 72-hour exercise had tested every aspect of her training, and she'd passed with distinction. Graduation day for the advanced sniper course was both celebratory and bittersweet. Of the 12 candidates who'd started the program, only 6 had successfully completed all requirements. Maria was not only among the graduates, but had achieved some of the highest scores in the course's history. "Congratulations, Sergeant Santos," Master Sergeant Morrison said, as he pinned the sniper qualification badge to her uniform. "You've proven that determination and skill matter more than size in this profession. I expect great things from you." The graduation ceremony was attended by family members and unit commanders. Maria's parents had flown in from Texas, her father beaming with pride despite his lingering concerns about her chosen profession. Her mother wept openly when Maria received her certificate and qualification badge. "Mija, I'm so proud of you," her mother whispered during the reception afterward. "But promise me you'll be careful." Maria's first assignment as a qualified sniper came 3 weeks later. She was posted to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, home of the 101st Airborne Division, and assigned to a sniper section preparing for deployment to Afghanistan. The unit was scheduled to deploy in 6 months, giving her time to integrate with her new team and prepare for combat operations. The sniper section was commanded by Captain James Murphy, a veteran of multiple deployments who had initially been skeptical about receiving a female sniper. His concerns weren't about gender, but about team dynamics and the physical demands of combat operations. "Santos, I'll be honest with you," he said during her initial briefing. "I've never worked with a female sniper before, and some of the guys in the unit have concerns about how you'll fit in. But I've read your training records, and they're impressive. You'll have to prove yourself here just like you did in sniper school." The sniper section consisted of 12 personnel organized into 6 two-man teams. Maria was partnered with Staff Sergeant David Kowalski, a Polish-American from Chicago with 8 years of infantry experience and 2 previous deployments. At 6 feet tall and 200 pounds, he was almost twice her size, but he approached their partnership with professionalism and curiosity rather than skepticism. "Look, Santos, I don't care if you're male, female, or Martian," he told her after their first training exercise together. "What I care about is whether you can shoot straight and watch my back. Based on what I've seen so far, we're going to work just fine together." Kowalski's acceptance was crucial for Maria's integration into the unit. As a respected veteran, his endorsement carried weight with the other team members. Within weeks, she had earned similar acceptance from most of the section, though a few individuals remained skeptical about her combat readiness. The months before deployment were filled with intensive training designed to prepare the unit for the specific challenges they would face in Afghanistan. Maria and Kowalski practiced operating as a team, with him serving as her spotter while she handled the primary shooting duties. They also cross-trained on each other's roles, ensuring either could function independently if necessary. Urban operations training was particularly relevant, as their deployment would likely involve operations in cities and towns where enemy fighters could blend with civilian populations. Maria's ability to set up shooting positions in confined spaces and her skill at rapid target identification made her particularly effective in these scenarios. The Barrett .50 caliber rifle remained her primary weapon, but she also trained extensively with the M24 sniper weapon system for situations requiring a lighter, more maneuverable rifle. Her shooting scores with both weapons consistently ranked among the best in the section. Physical fitness remained a constant challenge. While Maria had proven she could handle the demands of sniper training, combat operations would require sustained performance under much more stressful conditions. She worked with the unit's fitness instructor to develop a training program that maximized her strength and endurance while accounting for her smaller size. The program included additional weight training to build upper body strength for carrying equipment, extended ruck marches to build endurance, and specialized exercises to improve her ability to quickly assume and hold shooting positions. By the time of deployment, she was in the best physical condition of her life. Mental preparation was equally important. Combat operations would expose her to stress levels that no training could fully replicate. She worked with the unit's psychologist to develop coping strategies and mental techniques for maintaining focus under pressure. The key thing to remember, the psychologist explained, is that your training has prepared you for these situations. Trust your abilities, trust your equipment, and trust your partner. When the shooting starts, your training will take over. 2 weeks before deployment, the section conducted their final training exercise, a week-long field problem that simulated the conditions they would face in Afghanistan. Maria and Kowalski were assigned to provide overwatch for a convoy moving through hostile territory, a mission that required them to establish positions along the route and maintain surveillance for extended periods. The exercise tested not just their tactical skills, but also their ability to work as a team under stress. Maria's shooting accuracy remained consistent throughout the week, even when fatigued from long hours of observation and limited sleep. Kowalski proved to be an excellent spotter, providing accurate range and wind information that enabled her to make difficult shots. Their final engagement of the exercise required them to eliminate enemy forces that had set up an ambush along the convoy route. The targets were positioned at ranges from 600 to 1,200 yards, requiring multiple shots from different positions. Maria successfully engaged all assigned targets, while Kowalski provided security and guidance. "Outstanding work, Team 7, Captain Murphy announced during the after-action review. "Santos, your shooting was flawless throughout the exercise. Kowalski, your spotting and tactical decisions were exactly what we need in theater. You two have developed into one of the best teams in the section." The compliment from their commanding officer was significant, representing full acceptance into the unit's brotherhood of snipers. Maria had proven that she belonged not just through her individual abilities, but as part of an effective team. On their final night stateside, the sniper section gathered for a traditional pre-deployment dinner. The atmosphere was both celebratory and somber, as everyone understood they were heading into a dangerous environment where their skills would be tested under real combat conditions. Captain Murphy raised his glass for a toast. "To the finest group of snipers I've ever had the privilege to command," he said. "Tomorrow we deploy to Afghanistan, where we'll represent not just our unit, but the entire sniper community. I have complete confidence in every person in this room." As Maria looked around the table at her teammates, she reflected on how far she'd come since that first day at sniper school, when everyone had questioned whether she could handle the Barrett rifle. She'd not only mastered the weapon, but had earned her place among the Army's elite snipers. But she also understood that the real test was still ahead. Training exercises and qualification courses were one thing. Actual combat operations were something entirely different. In Afghanistan, there would be no second chances, no do-overs, and no margin for error. The next morning, as their transport plane lifted off from Fort Campbell, Maria checked her equipment one final time. Her Barrett rifle was secured in its case, along with enough ammunition to sustain extended operations. She'd trained for this moment for months, but she knew that nothing could fully prepare her for what lay ahead. Beside her, Kowalski was doing his own equipment checks and reviewing maps of their assigned area of operations. Their partnership had evolved from initial uncertainty to complete trust and mutual respect. Whatever challenges they would face in Afghanistan, they would face them together. As the plane climbed toward cruising altitude, Maria closed her eyes and tried to rest. The next time she opened them, she would be in a war zone, where the skills she'd worked so hard to develop would be put to the ultimate test. The whispers about her size had long since been replaced by respect for her abilities, but combat would provide the final verdict on whether she truly belonged among America's warrior elite. The Afghan sun had barely risen over Forward Operating Base Chapman when Maria received the mission briefing that would change everything. Intelligence reports indicated that a high-value Taliban commander was planning to move through a valley 15 kilometers from the base. The sniper section had been tasked with interdicting the convoy and eliminating the target. After 4 months in Afghanistan, Maria had already participated in dozens of operations, but this mission was different. The target was one of the most wanted insurgent leaders in the region, responsible for coordinating attacks that had killed American and Afghan forces. Successfully eliminating him would significantly disrupt enemy operations in the area. The convoy is expected to move through Checkpoint Delta at approximately 1400 hours, Captain Murphy explained, pointing to a map of the operational area. Intelligence suggests 3 to 4 vehicles with an unknown number of security personnel. The target will likely be in the second or third vehicle. Maria studied the map carefully. The valley offered several potential shooting positions, but the range to the road would be substantial, likely exceeding 1,000 yards. Weather conditions would be challenging, with afternoon winds that could significantly affect bullet trajectory. Santos and Kowalski, you'll take the primary position on Hill 847, Captain Murphy continued. You'll have the best sight lines to the entire kill zone. Teams 3 and 5 will provide overwatch and security. The Hill 847 position was nearly 1,300 yards from the road, at the extreme edge of effective range for even the Barrett M82A1. Maria had made shots at similar distances during training, but never under combat conditions with a high-value target and enemy security forces present. "Ma'am, that's a hell of a long shot," Kowalski said quietly as they prepared their equipment. 1,300 yards in these wind conditions. Are you confident you can make it? Maria checked her rifle's zero and loaded her magazines with carefully selected ammunition. Each .50 caliber round had been inspected for consistency and accuracy. At these distances, even minor variations in bullet weight or powder charge could mean the difference between a successful mission and failure. "I can make the shot," she replied simply. It wasn't boastfulness, but professional confidence built on months of training and successful operations. The Barrett rifle had become an extension of herself, and she understood its capabilities intimately. The movement to Hill 847 took 3 hours, with the teams using different routes to avoid detection. Maria and Kowalski reached their position at 1100 hours, giving them plenty of time to set up and prepare for the engagement. The shooting position offered excellent concealment and multiple routes for withdrawal if necessary. Maria spent the first hour studying the valley through her scope, noting wind indicators and measuring exact distances to various points along the road. A small stream ran parallel to the path, and the vegetation growing along its banks would help her judge wind speed and direction. She also identified several alternative shooting positions in case they needed to relocate quickly. Range to the primary kill zone is 1,270 yards, she reported to Kowalski. Wind is currently 8 to 10 miles per hour from the southwest, but it's been variable. I'll need constant updates during the engagement. At 13:30 hours, their radio crackled with an update from the observation post. Convoy spotted approaching checkpoint Bravo. 3 vehicles, moving at moderate speed. Estimate arrival at Delta in 15 minutes. Maria settled into her shooting position behind the Barrett rifle. The massive weapon was perfectly stable on its bipod, and her body position felt natural after months of practice. She controlled her breathing and began her mental preparation for the shot. Vehicles in sight, Kowalski reported, scanning the road through his spotting scope. Lead vehicle appears to be a technical with mounted machine gun. Second vehicle is an SUV with tinted windows, likely carrying our target. Third vehicle is another technical providing security. Maria could see the convoy through her scope now, 3 dust clouds moving along the dirt road. The distance was extreme, but she'd made similar shots dozens of times during training. The key was patience and precise wind reading. Wind has picked up slightly, Kowalski reported. 10 to 12 miles per hour, still from the southwest. Target vehicle will be in the primary kill zone in 30 seconds. The convoy was moving faster than expected, which would complicate the shot timing. Maria would have only a brief window when the target vehicle was in the optimal position. She tracked the SUV through her scope, leading it slightly to account for its movement. Target vehicle entering kill zone. Now, Kowalski announced. Maria's world contracted to the view through her scope. The SUV appeared clearly in her crosshairs, moving from left to right at approximately 40 miles per hour. She led the vehicle by the calculated amount, accounting for bullet flight time and the target's movement. Her breathing stopped at the natural respiratory pause. Her trigger finger applied steady pressure until the Barrett fired, sending its massive projectile downrange at nearly 3,000 feet per second. The recoil was substantial but manageable, and she quickly recovered to observe the impact. 1,270 yards away, the .50 caliber bullet struck the SUV's engine block with devastating effect. The vehicle immediately lurched to a stop, white smoke pouring from under the hood. The convoy's security vehicles reacted quickly, with armed men dismounting to establish defensive positions. Confirmed hit on target vehicle, Kowalski reported. Engine is disabled, but I can't confirm if the target was eliminated. Through her scope, Maria could see figures moving around the disabled SUV. Intelligence had indicated the target might be wearing body armor, so a shot to the engine block was intended to disable the vehicle and force him into the open. Now she needed to identify and eliminate the specific individual among the security personnel. The Taliban fighters were well trained and reacted professionally to the ambush. They immediately began providing covering fire while evacuating personnel from the disabled vehicle. Maria counted at least 8 fighters, all armed with automatic weapons and RPGs. Second shot, center mass on the individual in the tan vest, Kowalski directed, identifying a figure who matched the target's description. The range was still over 1,200 yards, but the target was now stationary, taking cover behind the disabled SUV. Maria adjusted her aim point and prepared for her second shot. The Barrett's semi-automatic action allowed for quick follow-up shots, but accuracy at this distance required careful technique. Her second shot struck the target center mass, and through her scope, she could see him fall immediately. The .50 caliber bullet's massive energy transfer made survival extremely unlikely, even with body armor. Target down, she reported calmly. Confirmed kill on the primary target. But the mission wasn't over. The remaining Taliban fighters had identified the general direction of the shots and were beginning to advance up the hillside, seeking to engage the sniper team. Maria and Kowalski needed to eliminate as many as possible before withdrawing to their extraction point. Multiple targets advancing on our position, Kowalski reported. Approximately 6 fighters, range 800 to 1,000 yards. Maria began engaging the advancing fighters methodically. At these shorter ranges, the Barrett was devastatingly effective, and her shots were consistently lethal. Each engagement required only one round, as the massive bullets easily defeated whatever cover the fighters were using. Within 10 minutes, she had eliminated 5 additional targets, while the 6th had withdrawn back to the convoy position. The hillside fell silent, except for the wind blowing through the sparse vegetation. All targets neutralized or withdrawn, she reported. Ready to move to extraction point. The withdrawal from Hill 847 took 2 hours, with the team using careful movement techniques to avoid any remaining enemy forces. By the time they reached the extraction point, intelligence reports were already confirming the success of their mission. The Taliban commander had been killed, along with most of his security detail. Back at Forward Operating Base Chapman, the debriefing revealed the significance of their success. The eliminated target had been responsible for planning attacks throughout the region, and his death would significantly disrupt enemy operations. Maria's shooting had been flawless, with 6 shots resulting in 6 confirmed kills at ranges exceeding 1,200 yards. Outstanding work, Santos, Captain Murphy said during the after-action review. That was some of the finest long-range shooting I've ever witnessed. The intelligence community is already reporting disruption of enemy activities based on your success today. Word of Maria's performance spread quickly through the base and beyond. A female soldier weighing barely over 100 pounds had eliminated 6 enemy fighters at extreme range using the Barrett .50 caliber rifle. The story seemed almost impossible to those who hadn't witnessed her capabilities firsthand. But for Maria, the mission was simply another successful operation. She'd done exactly what her training had prepared her to do, using her skills and equipment to complete the assigned mission. The gender discussions and size debates that had dominated her early career now seemed irrelevant in light of her combat record. 3 weeks later, another high-priority mission came down through channels. This time, the target was an IED manufacturing facility hidden in a compound 15 miles from the base. Intelligence indicated the facility was producing the sophisticated explosives responsible for numerous coalition casualties in the area. The compound was heavily defended, with multiple security positions and early warning systems. A direct assault would likely result in significant casualties and might allow the bomb makers to escape or destroy evidence. Instead, Command decided to use precision sniper fire to eliminate key personnel and disable critical equipment. Maria and Kowalski were assigned to infiltrate to within striking distance of the compound and conduct a detailed surveillance mission, followed by precision strikes against specific targets. The operation would require them to remain hidden for up to 72 hours while gathering intelligence and waiting for the optimal moment to strike. The infiltration took place during a sandstorm that provided perfect concealment, but made navigation extremely challenging. Using GPS and compass bearings, they moved through the night to reach an observation position overlooking the target compound. The range to the main buildings was approximately 900 yards, well within the Barrett's effective envelope. For the next 2 days, they maintained continuous surveillance of the compound, documenting the activities and routines of the bomb makers. Maria identified 3 critical targets: the lead bomb maker, his assistant, and a Taliban commander who provided security for the operation. She also identified several pieces of equipment that would be vulnerable to .50 caliber fire. The compound's electrical generator, communications equipment, and chemical storage tanks were all within range and represented high-value targets that would significantly disrupt operations. On the evening of the 2nd day, intelligence reported that a high-level Taliban meeting was scheduled for the following morning. This would bring together several important targets in one location, providing an opportunity to inflict maximum damage on the enemy organization. Multiple high-value targets will be present tomorrow morning, their radio informed them. Priority is to eliminate the bomb maker and disrupt operations as much as possible. You have authorization to engage all legitimate targets. Maria spent that night planning her engagement sequence carefully. She would begin with the most important personnel targets, then shift to equipment and infrastructure. The Barrett's magazine held 10 rounds, and she had additional magazines prepared for extended engagement. As dawn broke over the compound, Maria observed increased activity as the Taliban meeting participants arrived. Through her scope, she could see the lead bomb maker directing activities in the main workshop, unaware that he was being watched by one of the Army's most skilled snipers. "Target 1 in sight," she reported to Kowalski. "Preparing to engage." Her first shot struck the bomb maker's center mass as he stood in the workshop doorway. The .50 caliber bullet's impact was devastating, eliminating him instantly and alerting the compound to the presence of a sniper. Maria immediately shifted to her second target, the Taliban commander who had emerged from a building to investigate the shooting. Her second shot found its mark before he could take cover, eliminating another key figure in the bomb-making operation. The compound erupted in activity as fighters scrambled to defensive positions and searched for the sniper's location. Maria used the confusion to engage equipment targets, putting rounds into the electrical generator and communications facility. Each shot was carefully aimed and precisely placed, maximizing damage to the enemy's capabilities. Her next targets were the chemical storage tanks used in bomb manufacturing. The .50 caliber bullets easily penetrated the containers, causing hazardous materials to spill across the compound. The resulting chaos further disrupted enemy operations and contaminated the work area. "Compound is in full alert status," Kowalski reported. "They're organizing search teams to locate our position. We need to consider withdrawal soon." Maria continued engaging targets of opportunity, eliminating 2 more bomb makers and destroying additional equipment. The Barrett rifle performed flawlessly, each shot finding its intended target despite the range and wind conditions. After 20 minutes of continuous engagement, she had fired 18 rounds and achieved 17 confirmed hits. The bomb-making facility was effectively destroyed, its key personnel eliminated, and its equipment rendered inoperable. "Mission complete," she reported. "Ready to initiate withdrawal." The extraction from the observation position required careful movement to avoid the search teams that were now scouring the area. Maria and Kowalski used their superior field craft to evade detection, reaching their extraction point without contact with enemy forces. The after-action assessment revealed the complete success of their mission. The IED manufacturing facility was permanently shut down, its key personnel eliminated, and its equipment destroyed. Intelligence estimates suggested the operation had prevented dozens of potential coalition casualties by removing a major source of sophisticated explosives. "Santos, your performance on this operation was nothing short of exceptional," Colonel James Harrison, the base commander, told her during the formal debriefing. 17 hits out of 18 shots at 900 yards under combat conditions against multiple target types. That's the kind of shooting that legends are made of. Word of Maria's latest success spread through military channels around the world. The small woman, who had once been dismissed as too petite for the Barrett rifle, was now being discussed as one of the most effective snipers in the theater of operations. But recognition brought new challenges. Enemy forces in the region had become aware of her capabilities and were actively seeking to locate and eliminate the sniper who had disrupted so many of their operations. Intelligence reports indicated that bounties had been placed on several coalition snipers, with special attention paid to the "Ghost of Chapman," as they had begun calling Maria. Her final major operation in Afghanistan came 6 months later, when intelligence located another high-value target in a compound that had previously been considered untouchable due to its defensive positions and early warning systems. The target was a senior Taliban leader responsible for coordinating attacks across multiple provinces. The compound was positioned on high ground with excellent visibility in all directions, making traditional sniper approaches nearly impossible. Previous attempts to eliminate the target had failed because conventional shooting positions were too exposed or too distant for effective engagement. Maria studied the intelligence reports and aerial photographs for days, looking for a solution to the tactical problem. Finally, she identified a potential shooting position that others had overlooked, an abandoned building complex nearly 1,800 yards from the target compound. The range was at the very edge of the Barrett's effective envelope, and the shooting conditions would be extremely challenging. But the position offered concealment and multiple withdrawal routes that made it tactically viable despite the distance. 1,800 yards in these wind conditions, that's pushing the envelope even for you, Kowalski observed as they planned the mission. Are you sure this is feasible? Maria had been asking herself the same question. The shot would require perfect wind reading, precise range estimation, and flawless technique. A miss would alert the target to their presence and likely result in their position being compromised. It's at the limit of what's possible, she admitted. But this target is too important to pass up. If we can eliminate him, it will significantly impact enemy operations in 3 provinces. The movement to the shooting position took 2 days, with multiple stops to avoid enemy patrols and observation posts. When they finally reached the abandoned building complex, Maria spent hours studying the target compound through her scope, measuring distances and observing wind indicators. The target appeared at predictable times each day, spending approximately 30 minutes in an exposed courtyard where he conducted meetings with subordinates. The window for engagement would be brief, and there would likely be only one opportunity for a successful shot. On the morning of the operation, Maria settled into her shooting position well before dawn. The Barrett rifle was perfectly supported and zeroed for the extreme range. She had selected her ammunition carefully, using only the most consistent rounds from her supply. Target compound coming to life, Kowalski reported as the sun rose over the mountains. Multiple personnel moving around, but no sign of our primary target yet. Maria controlled her breathing and reviewed her calculations one final time. At 1,800 yards, bullet drop would be substantial, and wind drift could move the projectile several feet off target. Everything had to be perfect for the shot to succeed. Primary target in sight, Kowalski announced. He's in the courtyard, meeting with 2 other individuals. Range is 1,830 yards. Through her scope, Maria could see the target clearly. He was a tall man wearing traditional Afghan clothing, gesturing as he spoke with his companions. The wind was steady at approximately 8 miles per hour from the east, requiring significant compensation. She settled her crosshairs well above and to the left of the target, accounting for bullet drop and wind drift at the extreme range. Her breathing slowed to the familiar rhythm, her heartbeat steady and predictable. The Barrett fired with its characteristic thunder, sending the massive bullet on its long journey to the target. At 1,800 yards, the bullet took over 2 seconds to reach its destination, time that seemed to stretch into eternity as Maria watched through her scope. The impact was clearly visible even at the extreme range. The target dropped immediately, struck center mass by the .50 caliber projectile. His companions dove for cover as the sound of the shot echoed across the valley several seconds later. Confirmed kill on primary target, Maria reported calmly. 1,830 yards. The shot would later be verified as one of the longest successful sniper engagements in Afghanistan, made by a woman weighing 110 pounds, using a rifle that many had said was too large for her to handle effectively. During the withdrawal from their position, Maria reflected on how far she had come since those early days of sniper training. The doubts about her size and strength had been replaced by a reputation as one of the most skilled and dangerous snipers in the military. When she returned to Forward Operating Base Chapman for the final time, preparing for rotation back to the United States, Her record spoke for itself. 43 confirmed kills, multiple high-value targets eliminated, and countless enemy operations disrupted. The Barrett M82A1 had become her signature weapon, and her ability to use it effectively had proven that determination and skill mattered more than physical size. Captain Murphy approached her as she prepared to turn in her equipment for the journey home. "Santos, it's been an honor serving with you. In 20 years of military service, I've never seen shooting like yours. You've redefined what's possible for a sniper." Maria packed her personal Barrett rifle carefully, the weapon that had become her trusted companion throughout the deployment. The rifle bore the marks of hard use in harsh conditions, but it remained as accurate and reliable as the day she'd first fired it. As her transport aircraft lifted off from Afghanistan, carrying her back to the United States, Maria looked down at the rugged landscape where she'd proven herself in the ultimate test of combat. The whispers about her being too small for the Barrett rifle had been replaced by stories of the ghost of Chapman, the legendary sniper who had struck fear into enemy forces across the region. 6 months later, at a ceremony at the Pentagon, Maria received the Silver Star for her actions during the IED facility mission. The citation read, "For conspicuous gallantry and extraordinary heroism while serving as a sniper with Task Force Warrior in Afghanistan." Sergeant Santos's exceptional marksmanship and tactical skill resulted in the elimination of high-value targets and the disruption of enemy operations, significantly contributing to mission success and the safety of coalition forces. But perhaps more important than the medals and recognition was the change she had brought to military culture. Her success had opened doors for other female soldiers who wanted to serve in sniper roles, proving that physical standards should be based on performance rather than assumptions about size or gender. Today, Staff Sergeant Maria Santos serves as an instructor at the Army's Sniper School, teaching new generations of snipers the skills and techniques that made her legendary. Students are often surprised when they meet their instructor, a petite woman who doesn't look like their idea of a warrior. But when she picks up the Barrett M82A1 and demonstrates her shooting technique, all doubts disappear. "Size doesn't determine capability," she tells her students during their first day of training. "Dedication, training, and mental toughness are what matter. If you're willing to work harder than everyone else and never give up, you can achieve things that others say are impossible." The Barrett rifle that once seemed too large for her now feels perfectly natural in her hands, an extension of her will and skill. The weapon that prompted whispers and doubts has become the tool through which she redefined what's possible for military snipers. Her story has become legend in military circles, inspiring a new generation of soldiers who understand that the most dangerous enemy is often the one you underestimate. In a profession where precision and skill matter more than size and strength, Maria Santos proved that the smallest warrior can cast the longest shadow.